Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, depending on where you are. Thank you very much for joining us today. A very warm welcome to our 2021 webinar series for utilities, which is co-hosted by the Global Water Operators Partnerships Alliance at UN Habitat and GIZ on behalf of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. That's always a mouthful. My name is Hannah, I'm with GIZ, and I have the pleasure of opening today's session. So before we dive in, you'll notice that we have moved to a new platform, Interactio, and we hope you're liking it so far. Allow us to show you some basic features to help you get settled in. Perhaps most importantly, you may choose your preferred language channel on the top of your screen. So simply click the button Audio Channel Selector, and our wonderful interpreters, Miguel and Laurent, will talk you through the webinar in the language of your choice. So thank you very much to both of them. If you would like to speak, please let our moderators know by pressing the Raise Hand button at the bottom left of your screen. And when you are ready to speak, press the large microphone button. And once the light turns red, you may go ahead. So again, that's red, go ahead. If you have questions for our speakers, please write them in the chat. The button is located on your top right. So we would like to remind you that this session is being recorded. Your participation automatically means that you grant recording permission. And if you do not want to be recorded, then kindly leave the session at this time. But please don't worry, because this recording will be shared after the session. So we are very excited to have 9 expert speakers here with us today. And a special thank you to them for joining us. And I will let Ms. Julie Perkins, officer in charge of the GWAPA Secretariat and our co-host, introduce our fantastic speakers. So thank you, and over to you, Julie.
Thank you so much. Are you hearing me?
Loud and clear.
Clear. Okay, excellent. Thanks so much, Hannah, and everyone. It's really nice to be back here again with you today for this first of a new season of GWAPA webinars. Well, last year our focus was on utilities COVID challenges and responses. This year, these webinars are leading up to the Global WAPS Congress, which we're planning in October of this year. And it's going to be addressing some of its priority themes. First on the list of these priority themes is climate change, which is increasingly in our faces and in our lives. And in these first 2 episodes of 2021, we're going to be looking at how these water and sanitation utilities are taking action around climate change, trying to curb its root causes, but in particular to prepare for its inevitable consequences. So in this first edition, we're going to be talking with a series of utilities about the preparations and responses to climate hazards that impact on their water and wastewater infrastructure and services, their operations and their staff. This event will also discuss to some extent the role of water operators partnerships, which is our bread and butter in supporting utilities' responses and preparedness to climate change impacts. Before we begin, if you can go to the next one there, I'd just like to give a big word of thanks to our co-conveners, GIZ, our reliable partners always in all of this, and to new partners for this webinar series for AGWA, WASA, who are both very happy to be working with, as well as to all of the regional WAP platforms and the utilities participating. As I mentioned, these webinars are leading up to our Global WAPS Congress. So the 4th edition of this is being held in October online from our host country, Germany, in Bonn. The session is online, it's free, it's open to all. It's going to be great, and we really encourage you to engage not only in the sessions now, but also in those sessions in October. The discussions that we're having here now are helping to better understand the needs for those sessions and help better shape the program and to enrich those discussions. We strongly invite you to join us there. On the next slide, I'm not going to introduce the speakers individually. I'll leave that to our moderator, Ruben, but I just wanted to give you a quick overview of where our speakers are coming from today. I thank them all very much for coming from very different parts of the world at very odd hours. So really great to have such a nice spread of utilities and partners from around the world. Now I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, who are delighted to have with us today. Dr. John Matthews is the Executive Director and co-founder of AGWA, the Alliance for Global Water Adaptation. This is a global network that is developing, crowdsourcing, and mainstreaming the emerging practice of climate resilience, especially with regard to water management. His work blends technical and policy knowledge for climate adaptation and water management practical implementation. And John will be telling us about resilient utilities and resilient waters, and we're really looking forward to hearing him speak. So thank you. Welcome. Over to you, John.
Thank you so much, Julie. Can you hear me all right? I just want to start off and say how grateful I am to be invited by GWOPA to speak to you all today. I'm really excited to speak to a very practical audience, people who are dealing with pragmatic issues on a daily basis and trying to think forward and manage forward. As Julie mentioned, AGWA is a global network of water professionals that are trying to think about how best to incorporate climate change perspectives into their own work. Today, I'm going to primarily be focused on climate adaptation. I think that's the newer piece for most of us around the world. I'm also really excited to say that I think I've worked in every one of the countries that's going to be presented in the extended case studies by the other speakers today, which is really exciting as well. Next slide, please. I'd like to just start off with a quote that I think captures maybe the most important insight that we have in this space. We build things that last a really long time, and the implications for long-lived infrastructure are really critical. If we think about London's municipal water supply system, the oldest pieces of it date back to the 1660s. A city like Lahore, that we'll be hearing from later today, is thousands of years old. Actually, the decisions that we make with our water utilities, they will have implications that last not just on a decadal scale, but they will shape development for centuries. And we should be thinking about that very long-term perspective. And when we do, we have to think in terms of a climate change perspective and how the climate will continue to shift regardless of the outcomes of the Paris Agreement. Next slide, please. The traditional approach that we've used for the last 150 years or so to think about our decisions around water management, actually coming out of that kind of early British tradition in particular, it really begins with often a very senior level decision maker, typically a politician, who defines a specific need and problem, often quite narrowly. We need water for this part of the country, this part of the city. It's handed over to a technical analyst, often an engineer. That technical analyst may develop or use a climate risk assessment. And then a single solution is developed. And then this is handed off to users, to stakeholders, to people actually in the community. There's a deep dissatisfaction with this model. We've been doing it for a long time. We often find that users and stakeholders are not happy with the decisions that the decision maker have come up with, and it's often too narrow in its focus. And while climate change is difficult to predict, it's difficult to constrain. There are actually lots of other kinds of issues that we need to be able to think about too. We need to think about demographic change, urbanization, political system change, even major shifts in economic function and structure. And that really requires a kind of broader approach. And I think there's a deep awareness and willingness to think about how we move beyond top-down water management. Next slide, please. Over the past 15 years or so, there's been a really significant change towards trying to think about when we involve users and stakeholders. If you could just click one more time, please. It's really about shifting when the decision maker is involved, and especially that engineering voice. And it's changing the role of the engineer in particular. What we see in many countries right now is that the technical analyst, as I said, typically an engineer, is someone who's engaging quite early in the process now to communicate with users, with stakeholders, to develop a shared vision and a set of objectives. To have them really articulate the problem and the need, and the analyst translates that into the technical language of water management. In very practical terms, that means developing a range of solutions, not a single solution. And then we can evaluate and compare these different types of solutions based on their appropriateness for how we think that the climate is moving, how it's transitioning. And the decision maker, of course, is still quite involved, but will be making a choice based on maybe another costs, such as political feasibility, the ultimate expenses. Maybe we need to actually even sequence several of these solutions. So it's from its most fundamental level, I think it's actually about preparing a more complex view of the future, trying to negotiate trade-offs around a broader range of issues. Next slide, please. These bottom-up approaches are still relatively new. The first formal methodology that's meant for practical users came out in 2015 from the World Bank. It's called the Decision Tree Framework. AGWA was involved in its development. UNESCO published in 2018 a kind of follow-up guide called CRIDA, or CRIDA, Climate Risk Informed Decision Analysis. There have been others that have come out as well. Arup, the British engineering firm, developed the City Water Resilience Approach. It's a methodology that we've also been involved with, and GIZ has recently deeply embraced. In particular, the World Bank has articulated several new iterations of the decision tree framework specifically for utilities. We try to list all of these on our website that's listed down there at the bottom. But these all build on the kinds of technical approaches that we've used in the past, but try to bring this kind of long-term insight and a combination of approaches that we think of as the key to adaptation, combining robust approaches with flexible approaches. Next slide, please. Where do we see typical examples? The World Bank and CRIDA approaches have been used now in many dozens of countries at this stage. CRIDA, one of its very first test cases was actually in Zambia. We'll be having a talk from a different part of Zambia later. One of the things I want to point out with the next couple of slides is where the different kinds of insights that the bottom-up approaches tell us. In Lusaka, with the municipal utility there, one of the key ideas that we had was actually that the climate impacts were not to the water storage systems. It actually was to the electrical grid. And the electrical grid, of course, is primarily based on hydropower. And diversifying the energy sources so that they are less climate influenced and we have good backup systems was a really critical system level insight in Lusaka. Next slide, please. In California, this is a state that has recently adopted CRIDA as well. The Department of Water Resources has seen a pattern that is actually widespread around the world, where we in many systems where we have high altitude snowpack is our primary water storage system. Climate change means that that snowpack is becoming less reliable, sometimes disappearing entirely. And sometimes it's even going farther, and it's creating a more frequent flooding conditions. That's the case in California. Historically, for the last century or so, almost all the water has been stored not behind dams, but in snow. And the transition that California has started to explore is actually how can we use groundwater as our storage mechanism, actually capturing the floodwaters using passive infiltration systems, and then being able to use that as an urban water supply system that's actually more reliable. So it's a move from above ground frozen water storage to below ground liquid water storage. It's quite a powerful idea. Next slide, please. And here's an example from Thailand. The second largest city in Thailand after Bangkok is Udon Thani. It's in the north. It's a major trade hub between especially China and Thailand, and it's right in the Mekong too. So it's a lateral trade route east-west as well. And here they've taken a slightly different approach to a bottom-up methodology. They have tried to look at the utility itself, but also at a broad range of other sectors and kind of embedding that utility into other issues such as energy generation, hydropower, and agriculture, thinking about irrigation needs for rice, as well as increases in both drought intensity and flood intensity. And they've taken what I think of as a kind of deep resilience approach, trying to develop a series of urban wetlands and lakes, what is called in China a sponge city, and using this as a way to buffer many of the changes, not just to droughts and floods, but also across institutions, across sectors. A very, very interesting creative idea. I think they're in the final stages of actually implementing the system now. And it's an idea that came really out of this bottom-up stakeholder engagement approach. Next slide, please. And I hope that you all will reach out. AGWA has a series of technical and policy newsletters. We really engage you to dig through our library to talk to us. We are a community of practice and really welcome your partnership. Thank you so much, Julie. And I believe now I need to hand things over to Ruben, if I understand correctly. I'd like to introduce Ruben Sapuma. He's an engineer and has been managing the Zambia program of water and sanitation for the urban poor, WASA, since 2008. It's an excellent organization. Ruben has 20 years of experience in water and sanitation service delivery. For the last 3.5 years, he has been working together with the Southern Water and Sanitation Company, one of our panelists today, on a climate change action plan against drought. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Is everyone able to hear me? Okay,
yes,
so
loud and clear.
Thank you so much. So we will go straight away to begin our discussions, and we have the first speaker coming from Africa, and this is Gift Monde from Southern Water and Southern Water and Sanitation Company from a town called Choma in Zambia. Mr. Monde, of course, is a managing director for Southern Water and Sanitation Company, and this is based, of course, in Choma. And Southern Water and Sanitation Company is a local utility that has a service area of more than 500,000 people. So, Gift, can you get us started, please?
Gift, are you there? Ah, there you are.
Yes. Are you able to get me?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I have already been introduced. I'll just go straight into my few keynotes. Southern Water and Sanitation Company is based in the southern part of Zambia, which is drought prone. Now, Zambia lies in zone 1 of the SADC zoning in terms of climate change. And the impact on the southern part of Zambia is more on the droughts than the floods. In 2019, let me just say from 1978 to 1998, precipitation has been dropping, that is rains, over the period. And really the projection, the way it is, if somebody says in 2040 there will be no rains, I'll believe. Why so? It's because in 2019, just 2 years ago, we had very low precipitation to an extent that out of the 15 dams that Southern Water and Sanitation Company uses to supply water, 7 of them dried up completely. And that meant that the company would not operate unless we changed. And we were resilient enough because we quickly went underground. We dug boreholes, we sank boreholes, and this was a mitigative measure to sustain the sales of the company and, of course, the supply. Fortunately, we managed actually to pull through this drought, and that is what made us actually now shift. We have a very healthy partnership with the WASA, Water and Sanitation for Urban Poor, and luckily in 2019 we were already engaged with them in the utility strengthening program. It's out of after 2019 that the strengthening actually shifted in terms of what we needed to focus on in terms of resilience, because this was an eye-opener. So what we did, we came up with about 5 pillars, strategic pillars going forward. And today I want to address 2 pillars, that is the sanitation and also in terms of water resource management, non-revenue water reduction, because this speaks actually to climate change in terms of wastage. On sanitation, together with WASA, we managed to map the current sanitation. The background in Zambia is that sanitation was under the local authorities, the councils. But in 2019, the mandate was shifted to utilities, and Southern Water and Sewerage was given the mandate. So since 2019, we saw that this is an opportunity for us actually to save groundwater, because groundwater saved the utility in 2019, but then before that, the construction of on-site sanitation was not properly supervised under the councils, and we had a lot of shoddy on-site constructions, especially in the low-income areas, which actually is a potential contamination of the groundwater that we cherish as Southern Water and Sanitation Company in the province. So this pillar, we managed actually to map all the types of sanitation, the options that we have at the moment, and the existing ones. Then after mapping, we developed a strategic plan on sanitation. In the strategic plan for sanitation, we enshrined in it an MOU that will be signed, that was to be signed with the local authorities. Now, this would bring accountability in terms of the local authorities on infrastructure development, that is on sanitation, but also it gives leverage to Southern Water in terms of supervision or taking part in enforcement and the regulation of the construction of on-site sanitation. So this was an opportunity, and once these MOUs were signed, then the local authorities develops, or they are developing now. We are running about 13 councils. They are now developing bylaws that will be used to enforce the construction and supervision of the on-site sanitation to protect groundwater. All these we are doing together with WASA. Due to the strategic plan that we developed, we managed actually also to attract investment from Unilever that we are piloting in Livingstone. It's a comprehensive pilot project that includes fecal sludge management to provide where pit emptiers are going to dislodge to avoid contamination of groundwater. We have gone further in terms of water safety plans that we have produced and water safety teams that are multi-sectoral in nature, under which we want to protect the catchment areas up to the doorsteps in terms of non-revenue water. This is how the water safety plans are structured, under which we have partnered with the schools in tree planting around catchment areas, because tree cutting is also a problem in our country in terms of charcoal production. So we are planting trees at the moment in the catchment areas. Then the documentation that we have developed with WASA is also helping us in terms of attracting investment in terms of climate adaptation and the mitigation in tree planting. We are at a stage where now we are coordinating development in sanitation infrastructure in the areas. As we speak, on Friday, we are having one council has already called us that they have, thank you, they have opened an area that we need to participate in terms of planning. So we are now in a process of turning around, or I would say now we are climate proof in terms of planning going forward with the resources and also the strength that we have gained through the partnership with WASA. What is critical is to monitor this process, because it will not run smoothly. There will be a lot of resistance from other stakeholders, but what will be key is involvement of the partners and also the users on the ground. Thank you so much, Mr. Spuma.
Go now straight on to Asia, and we begin with Pakistan Water Operators Network, or PWON. So we have now Mr. Zahid Aziz, and he is the chairman of the Pakistan Water Operators Network, and he is at the same time the managing director of the Water and Sanitation Agency, WASA, in Lahore, Pakistan. So WASA, of course, is a local utility that has service area of over 20 million people and is a member of the National Water Operators Network that we've alluded to. So, Mr. Aziz, it's your turn, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. It's a pleasure to be amongst professionals around the world. In Pakistan, the climate change effect is more than any other place because we are depending on snow melting for our irrigation water, and for our drinking purpose water we need groundwater, and groundwater all definitely depends on the surface water flow, because the surface water seeps into the ground to get turned into groundwater. So this is the one thing in which we are encountering the issue of climate change, water supply. The other thing is flash flooding, and especially the urban flooding. And because of the region in which the monsoon rains take place, this monsoon phenomena ranges from 1st of July every year to 30th of September. 3 months period is high rain period. And in Lahore city, where I belong, and I'm heading the organization of utility in Lahore, the average rainfall in this 3 months period is around 600 millimeters. But because of climate change, now we are encountering rainfall of even 300 millimeter or 250 millimeter in one particular day instead of 3 months period. So this intensity increase is creating great challenges. And as mentioned in the questions which are put in the guidelines, that the staff reputation is also affected, because when there is high rain and there is water everywhere, then the reputation of the staff and the organization is also put at stake. And so all these things we need to do something, and we are doing something. Because the best thing is to do something. Otherwise, as mentioned in the question number 4, even the leadership of the organizations tend to change in such places. So the first thing is underground water reservoir system we are creating in the city of Lahore. The first underground reservoir was constructed last year. The pictures you can see. Because the infiltration rate in Lahore soil is not very high, so we prefer to do storage. And then this the water which comes to the road and to the deeper part for ponding comes into the storage tank, and then after the tank is filled, this water is used for irrigation purpose, for horticulture purpose. So this is the first experiment, and now this project is completed, and a tennis court is constructed on this water storage tank because this belongs to a park, the area. So without compromising on the land use, we have been succeeded in doing this water storage work, and now there is no water accumulation on that particular road. The other kind of we are now replicating this model in other places in the city. So at three places in the city, the underground reservoirs are under construction. The second step, which is also out of the box, that the mosques which are in the city, there are different places. There are mosques where people come to pray, and before entering the mosque, they wash their hands and do ablution with water, and mostly the detergent is not used in this kind of in ablution. So in 200 mosques in the city, WASA has constructed small kind of reservoirs which take away this ablution water, do some chlorination, and then this water is used for parks, irrigation of the parks and the playgrounds. And then car washing, recycling of car washing water. At 300 places in the city, the recycling activity of the used water, which is used, we are using. And for air pollution control, you see the picture, on every Saturday, the WASA staff, including me, comes on bicycles to offices to control the emissions of smoke in the city. Many organizations are following this activity. So all these things are very essential to do out-of-box things. In the groundwater depletion is another effect of the climate change, because the river flows are reduced and snow melting is reduced, so groundwater levels are getting down, abstraction is high, and so we are now planning to shift our water source from groundwater dependence to surface water, because irrigation canals are there in the city of Lahore and the province of Punjab where we are located. The irrigation canals, we get water from irrigation canals, and this water is will be used for drinking purpose after treatment, and then after usage, the wastewater will be returned after treatment to the same canal, so that the irrigation system is not disturbed. So these are the few steps we are taking, and I think it's already 6 minutes for my allocated time of presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aziz, for that wonderful presentation. So now we shift our attention to the Pacific, and in particular, we'll be looking at BWON Water District, which is BAWAD in the Philippines. And there we have Ms. Alma Ambrazado, who is the general manager of the BWON Water District in BWON City in the Philippines. BWON is a local utility that is located, of course, in the coastal region with mountains, and Miss Ambrosaudo, who will be speaking today together with Mr. Carl Kamstra, who is the project manager of the Waterworks project that is entitled Performance Enhancement Water Utilities in the Philippines. So it's your turn to make the presentation.
Okay, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. I'm speaking from the Philippines, together with Mrs. Alma Abrasaldo, who is the General Manager of BWON Water District. Next slide, please. In 2020, the BWON of the Philippines was hit by a typhoon called Quinta locally, and where BWON is located. It still caused a lot of rainfall in BWON. I think one day it was more than 200 millimeters, which is normal rainfall for 1 month. That was in October 2020. And due to the heavy rainfall, the newly built water treatment facility, which was 8 meters above the level of the river, was heavily affected by the flash flood. As you can see on the pictures here, it was about halfway the steel tanks where the water level rose. It was a newly built facility. And also all the electrical equipment was devastated. Now this is a unique situation because, of course, the Philippines always experiences a lot of rainfall, but so much rainfall in a typhoon that doesn't even hit the island directly, that was quite exceptional. So what we did, or what BWON Water District did, and maybe Ms. Alma, you can share that with us, what you did after the disaster hit BWON City.
Miss Abrasaldo, we can't hear you. Is your microphone?
Good morning.
There you are. Perfect.
Yeah. So, hello everyone. And yes, Carl was talking about the flood that hit our place and devastated our facilities, which serves 2 barangays. So we were not able to serve water for a few months, and we were trying to find some help. And we are very grateful for the help that Vitis International had given us in order to restore the facility, and we put it above ground. So, Mr. Carl?
Yeah, and maybe we can show the next slide.
Next slide, please.
Okay, here you see the newly built treatment facility. In the previous slide, you could see the dam that was crossing the river. It was overflowing. BWON has a water tanker to supply those mountainous areas with water. But because of the faraway location of the boats,
Might have lost Carl. He's having some internet issues. Ms. Abrasaldo, would you like to continue?
Yeah. Okay, so we were able to rebuild the facility. As you can see there in this picture, we built the facility higher. Then we put something here like a second flooring to install all the electricals, the panel boards, and then the solar panels are right up here. So this is now at 6 meters above the ground level. So we know this would be safe against the incoming flood if ever there will be one. So it helps us a lot, and we were able to inaugurate the facility. last April 15 with the barangay people also. They are being part of the ceremony. They were being told and then discussed to them this flow chart here, how the water will be treated for their use. So it also gives them the idea that they are a part of the project by protecting the environment, of course, a tree planting activity, and of course, sanitation initiatives also, that they won't throw something, pollutants or whatever waste that they would have into that river, because that's the only water body there that can be used for source of their drinking water for both barangays. Carl, how are you?
I hope I'm back. There's a poor internet connection here. One last thing we would like to share is that during that opening ceremony, which you can see in the left top corner, also a sustainability compact was signed by the community in that area. So meaning that the community is also responsible for maintaining the system in well working order. And what's also nice to mention, I think, is that BWON is now experimenting with solar energy. Although the sky is very often overcast and it's raining very often, it still is able to produce enough electricity. So that's also a very sustainable solution. No more generator, no more dependence on the electricity, which is regularly cut off. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Carl and Alma, for that nice presentation. We straight away go to Europe now, and specifically in Seville, Spain, with Seville Water Supply and Sanitation Company. So we have Mr. Lucas Perea, who is the head of the Cooperation and Funds Department in the company. And the company is a metropolitan water operator with more than 380,000 customers and a coverage ratio of 100% for both water and sanitation. So, Mr. Perea, it's your turn to present.
Muy buenos días o buenas tardes.
Good morning or good afternoon. I want to thank GWOPA and you and Habitat and JZ for offering me this possibility to talk to you. So I'm talking in the name of the city of Seville. We are located in the south of Spain. We have quite a temperate Mediterranean climate, as you know. We have 30 degrees Celsius today, and we know that the climate change is going to affect us, and in the next 25 years we are going to have higher temperatures. We're going to go up to 5 degrees Celsius more, with a reduction of 20% of the rainfall. And what's really very worrying is that we're going to have a 65% reduction in the water resources. So today we are modifying we have a modification of the rainfall. So we have a concentration of rain in very short periods, and this creates floods, and this alternates with very long periods of drought. Actually, in 2019, the Seville Town Hall declared the climate emergency. Therefore, we saw ourselves just completely obliged to really create a plan of 50 different measures in order to fight the climate emergency. Some of these measures represent many of the actions that we used to carry out in the past. So basically, what are these different measures? The first measure is that we're just reducing the water that is being treated. So we are just reducing the quantity of water, incorporating sustainable drainage systems. So we are reducing the quality. We are improving the quality of the water also by creating stormwater retention reservoirs in order to organize the flow of water, and in order not to overcharge the sanitation systems that we have. And also each time we renovate any of our water networks, so we're just keeping in mind the sustainability. We're just in all our urban planning also, we are creating spaces for socialization. We are creating more trees, and we are trying to adopt more participative processes. And also we're just working on water and energy. We always have to link water with energy, so we try to reduce the consumption of energy in all our plants, the water treatment plants, the pumps also. This is extremely important to reduce the amount of energy that is used by these pumps. And today 84% of the fleet that we have become electrified. So electrification is very important. We are just trying also to reduce the leaks. In the last years, we have reduced the leaks from 23% to 13%. So you see that this allowed us to face the different droughts that we have been suffering. Usually every 6 years, we have a period of 4 years maybe of drought. So we have established a plan to manage the water supply in order to reduce the water consumption, and we have reduced 36% the final consumption of water in the last year. So we went from 175 liters in 1998 per person to 112 liters nowadays, and we have created a system of monitoring for the quality of water in the water reservoirs. And due to the higher temperatures that we have in the water reservoirs, this is affecting, of course, the quality of the water. It's creating algae. We see the growth of certain types of bacteria that we need to constantly control. And we have put in place also a project to really catch underground water, and also to really make sure that all the leakage of superficial water that we have in years of heavy rainfalls, that we can capture it, and we can capture it and keep it in order to have much more resilient in times of drought. We try to reach 100% of our users. So through our training campaigns, we try to improve the training of the people. We have just organized a master's program with the University of Seville, with all the people who just work in the water cycle sector. And also we have created the Water Observatory, which is a participative institution about water management, where we have a representation of all the different stakeholders. So we give voice to absolutely all the different stakeholders. When we talk about our project, we receive their feedback, their comments, in order to improve our different interventions throughout all the water cycle that we're just managing. We try basically to gather absolutely all the different viewpoints, to analyze absolutely everything. So these are the different actions that we're carrying out in the south of Spain in fighting climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lucas, for that nice presentation. So we now conclude with our presenter from the Caribbean, and specifically Dominica Water and Sewerage Company Limited, or DOWASCO. And our fifth speaker, of course, is representing the Caribbean region, and is Mr. Bernard Etnoff. He is the general manager of the Dominican Water and Sewerage Company. So, Mr. Etnoff, it's your time to make the presentation.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to all. I'm very happy to be part of this panel here today. Very insightful thus far. Dominica is a very tropical island, small island in the Caribbean, We pride ourselves in being called the Nature Isle, the land of many rivers, land of much water. We say that we have 365 rivers. We supply water to approximately 98.5% of Dominica population at this point in time, which is a remarkable achievement over the years. We also provide water almost 24/7 using 43 different and distinct water systems. Now, although we try to merge these systems for greater efficiency and management, we still maintain the individual systems for cases of redundancy. We, as I indicated, a tropical island experiencing significant rainfall in many parts of Dominica. It ranges from about 1,800 millimeters on the drier west coast to approximately 5,000 millimeters in the interior and the east coast. This is significant. Many of our streams are rapidly flowing, although we are now experiencing the impact of climate change and we can visibly see the decline in water. And we are now engaging in some measurements. For example, streams that supplied in excess of 10 million gallons of water per day in the past, we noticed that there are some that are down to like 6 million gallons right now. And this is significant in terms of going forward because we have to manage. One of the things we are trying to do is to establish partnerships with the forestry division, which is responsible for the management of the forest, and also the environmental health people, the agricultural people, to avoid pollution of our intakes and minimize the felling of trees, which can pose significant impacts on our water sources. Currently, we rely on surface water, only surface water really. We do no groundwater at this point in time. And also most of our systems are gravity fed, which means we keep our energy costs pretty low compared to even some of our neighboring islands. We have been impacted significantly over the years by tropical disasters, mainly tropical storms and hurricanes. Many would have heard of Tropical Storm Erica, which took many lives in Dominica and disrupted several water systems for an extended period. And 2 years later in 2017, Tropical Storm Erica was in 2015. 2 years later in 2017, we've had one of the worst hurricanes, in fact, the worst to hit Dominica over the last few years, or many years. That was Hurricane Maria, packing winds of in excess of, a Category 5 hurricane. So we say Category 5 plus. Many lives were lost. Most of our systems were disrupted. And so in several ways, we lost access roads to our intakes. We lost pipelines through landslides, mudslides, washed away by rivers. Our waters became very, very silted, which is one of the major problems that we have in Dominica, siltation, especially during these heavy rainfalls, these torrential rainfalls that are becoming more and more frequently. In spite of all this rain, we do suffer from drought as well, and we are just now coming out of the drier season. We did not suffer significantly because we have quite a few rivers, and because of the small nature of some of the systems, we're able to provide water 24/7 still. But we notice the significant impact on our sources, and we have to be educating people to reduce on their consumption. So these are some of the things that we suffer from. Our experience during Tropical Storm Erica and Hurricane Maria is that we must not just cater for the needs of the public in terms of providing water, but if we're going to do that, we have to ensure that the staff are well taken care of. I can tell you, for example, after Hurricane Maria, we had staff members. Dominica lost most of its housing infrastructure. Roofs on almost maybe 80% of the houses had gone. Many of those people included our own staff. And yet, many of these people showed up to work 2 days after the hurricane, major hurricane, without food at their homes, some of them, and without clothing to wear. So we realized that we had to do something for people like that, and wherever we could find T-shirts or jerseys, we purchased and distributed. We ensured that since we had no offices to work from, we were working out of a stores area. We got a stove, and the ladies who were not on the field repairing pipes and roads were preparing a hot meal for the staff. And so we recognize that it is something that we have to, incorporate in our continuity of operations plan. And every year we have been updating our plans, making provisions for how we're going to supply water to communities in the event of a disaster, but not leaving out provisions for our staff in the event that they too are affected. So our plan calls for a staff welfare committee that address the needs of the staff, the education of the staff prior to any event and after an event, how we assist them in going forward. Our plan also calls for the provision of alternative water sources to provide water to communities, which means that prior to any season, we ensure that we have adequate plastic portable storage tanks ranging from even 800 gallons to 5,000 gallons that we can deploy in the events of a disaster where they are most needed. We also have bladders and small movable filtration plants that we place on any river, any stream, and purify water and provide to our people. Thanks to our many partners and donors who came to our rescue following Hurricane Maria in particular and donated some of these things to us. Prior to Hurricane Maria, we had no water trucks. We now have 4 water bowsers, 2,000 gallons each, that we use to provide water to communities where there is stress. We also, in collaboration with WASA, that's the Caribbean Water and Sewage Association, and the CWWA, we were able to receive much support from regional utilities. And we feel that this is something that the region, which is a very small region, has to do a little more of to support each other during times of hurricanes and other disasters. So we upgrade this plan all the time, and we tweak it every year, and we submit to the government, to the National Emergency Planning Organization, and we educate our staff as to what the plan calls for and intend to continue. I realize my time is up, but these are just some of the things that we do, and in building back better to build resilience, more resilience into our systems. Thank you very much.
Our presenters, I think we've had a wonderful package from across the globe. I think all is well represented. I've just checked the chat. There isn't so much of questions. Maybe to the presenters rather, as a way of discussion now, before the general audience comes in. What do you think, what support do you need as utilities when it comes to your need to act on these climate challenges that we've had? Anyone can respond. There is a provision for the hand. You have any of our presenters. I think most of you are utilities. So what support do you require for you to be able to act?
Lucas, would you like to answer that?
Nosotros,
Well, in order to face climate change and its effects, one of the things that we need is just to join efforts between the different levels of administration, because the water management in Spain is completely separated. So we have the general administration of the Spanish state that is in charge of the large infrastructures, and then we have lower level administrations because we have the regions, we have the regional governments also that carry out investment plans also, but the management of rivers depends on another type of institutions, which is what we call the hydrographic administrations, basically, that are completely independent. So which means that the management of the global water cycle is depends on the local authorities. So basically we have a conglomerate of different levels of institutions and levels of government who are responsible of the water management, and this complicates the daily life of the water operators. Another thing that is extremely important to take into account is the digitalization process. The digitalization of water for us is a system that would allow us to improve the service that we're just offering to our consumers and the information that we can get from the users in order to make sure that our systems are much more resilient. This is something that we saw in all the presentations by the different water operators, the capacity to be to overcome very rapidly any crisis. This is extremely important. We need to offer quality water, and we need to be capable of just getting back on our feet as soon as we can, because it's a human right, and we need to be capable of offering this service as fast as we can, no matter what the climate crisis can be, no matter what the problem is going to be. And with the climate change accelerating, this is going to be very frequent. So that's why we need to be much more resilient. We need to have plans for droughts, for floods. We need to create many systems for water that are autonomous energetically. We need to reduce our energy consumption. We need to have backup systems. So we need to work on all these different fields, the water operators, in order to be as resilient as possible. And what's really very important, first and foremost, is to share knowledge and share information in order to be able to help each other. We have different cooperation projects through GWOPA, and also we are just putting in place other cooperation projects with the Spanish Cooperation Agency in order to make sure that other water operators also get absolutely all the knowledge and experience that we have in order to have the better and more optimized water management.
Mr. Pereira, for that comprehensive feedback. John, you have any reaction? Or?
Thank you so much, Ruben. I want to build on the strength of Lucas's statement. I'd say that there are three areas that are really critical for us to be able to focus on. The first is maybe building, especially on Lucas's last point, is to focus on the the idea of knowledge sharing. And I'd say GWOPA is a great example of a group that allows peer-to-peer learning, and through a venue such as this, to generate new ideas, to share insights. The situation that we may be having in Central Asia may be quite similar to a situation that someone is facing in South America or in East Africa. And without networks, especially global networks like this, that kind of global scale learning will be really challenging. The second area, I think, is to focus on decision-making processes. It's really easy to especially look at and focus on data gaps. The reality is that we don't have data from the future. We never had data from the future, and it's not going to come. One of the things I was really struck by in listening to almost all of the talks is that each one of the utilities is facing both droughts and floods, instead of just one or the other. There are lots of things that are changing, and these changes are ongoing. They're probably going to continue for at least some decades more. And being able to think about how we make effective, resilient decisions, even when we don't know exactly what the future is going to look like, is really critical. That's the term of art in Agua is decision making under uncertainty, or even under deep uncertainty. And that represents a real change from the way that most utilities work, and understanding how to incorporate uncertainty, to treat it as almost as a kind of asset instead of as a problem, I think is a really significant point. The last issue I'd like to touch on, it's come up, I see from Argentina, it's come up in an earlier intervention as well, is around finance. And how we align finance and investment with our utilities is actually a really significant issue. I think it's very easy to assume that climate finance in particular is going to be the perfect solution, that there's going to be a lot of new money that shows up. And sometimes when you see the headlines in the newspapers about 100 billion US appearing, it sounds like a lot of money. It actually isn't. The amount of money that we spend globally on water, and much of which is for utilities, is probably in the order of 3 or 4 trillion US. I think it's probably better in most cases, instead of hoping or waiting for climate finance to come and save us, especially in middle income countries, in upper income countries. It's really an issue about making sure that all of our finance is effectively climate finance, all of our existing resources, and that we're actually trying to bring climate change into our existing financial flows. And sometimes that means that we need to communicate with our existing policymakers to understand that everything that we do needs to build in resilience, to build back better, to use the speaker from Dominica's a very nice phrase. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, John, for that feedback as well. Hannah, how are we doing with time before I hand over, or should I continue?
We're doing great on time. You can continue with a few other questions. I see that
Okay,
Gift has
that's
his
fine.
hand raised.
Okay, Gift, I can see your hand, yes. Can you proceed with your question or contribution?
I just wanted to emphasize.
Maybe if you can move close or put your mic
Hello,
closer.
are you getting
Excellent.
me now?
Excellent.
Thank you. Just the 3 items, I think they have covered a bit. I just want to emphasize. The first one is the issue of governance in terms of the way we structure the framework, in terms of starting from the national level up to the stakeholders, that is the users at the bottom. The governance systems must be strengthened. Then the second one is infrastructure. Some of us, in terms of utilities, we are still operating very old infrastructure that needs actually rehabilitation, and also to model it to adapt to the demands of climate change. I'll give you an example. Just in Livingstone, our infrastructure has actually to adapt to the low water levels in the Zambezi River, because it's going down and down. So we need to adapt to that kind of scenario. The last one, of course, it's strengthening the emergency preparedness plans. Once we have these, of course, it entails also the issue of resources, as alluded to by the previous speaker. We need actually resources to do all these things. That is a financial resource. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gift. Of course, Livingstone is our tourist capital here in Zambia for others. I can see Bernard has a hand up. Bernard, you can proceed, please.
Yes. Well, again, I just want to add a couple things. I appreciate all that has been said already. But for our region, which is pretty small, I think although we do have good cooperation, but I think there's still a need for greater collaboration and cooperation among our sister utilities. It's a small region. We all suffer from basically the same events all the time. And I think there is need for example, for us to pool our resources and have an emergency supply all the time available to any utility that requires it, that needs it at any point in time. So through our institutions like WASA and CWWA, I'm hoping we can find a mechanism to bring something like that about in quick order. We do have a mechanism whereby people move from utility to utility, but we have the supplies moving and tools and equipment. It could also assist. The issue of insurance is something that we are also faced with in the region. We cannot find adequate insurance for our assets, or water systems, or intakes, and that can affect us. In 2019, we lost in excess of $21 million of our assets and so on. Fortunately, we had some coverage and recovered some $9.4 million, but that was really small in terms of what we had to spend to bring this about. And of course, part of the lessons we learned here in Dominica is the cooperation, local cooperation, that is cooperation with other entities, forestry, environmental health, and importantly, the communities, where there's quite a bit of community knowledge that can assist us in how we mainstream resilience in our systems going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bernard, for that feedback. Maybe the other question that I would pose to the panel is regarding the role of the Water Operators Partnership. What role, of course, Bernard has partially touched on this when he referred to the cooperation among the neighboring countries, but what role do you think the Water Operators Partnership can play in terms of climate financing? Anyone can respond to that?
Do we want to have Carl and Alma, for example, since they're here in the context of a WAP?
Yeah, I think you are right.
Miss
Carl, are you here?
I am here. Just
Nope, we can't hear you. Seems to be a problem with your mic.
You may need to maybe hit the space bar.
Oh, doesn't seem to be working anymore, unfortunately. Not
Go
sure,
ahead.
maybe Ms. Abersaldo wants to jump in.
Okay, so yeah, partnerships between BAWAD Water District and Philippines International was a great help, and also we would like also to make mention that also the partnership with the local government unit is also a great help, as well as the stakeholders. So in terms of financing, that was a co-sharing or a shared responsibility. The Philippines shared to us as a form of grant, and the water district also give our share on like labor, as well as all those connectors or clients. They also shared a part of their sweat equity. Carl?
Okay. Thank you. I think you brought in the aspect of cost sharing, and I'm sure Gift, who is here, who is also part of the Waterworks VTEN supported the project, can attest to that. They are also doing the cost sharing, as you've clearly indicated. Carl, are you able to add anything if you still have anything?
can you hear me now?
Yes,
Very clear, very clear.
loud
Yeah.
and clear.
Okay, good. Yeah, there's always some problems with the internet here, so I'm sorry for that. Yeah, we are cooperating in the Water Operator Partnership in the Waterworks program from the Dutch water utilities, and I think 24 partnerships all over the world. You may have known, you may have heard of that. So we were able to mobilize some money from the Water for Life Foundation. Sorry for the cat. the Water for Life Foundation, which is a customer foundation in the Netherlands. The Dutch water consumers, they contribute a small amount per day for helping water utilities all over the world. What I also would like to mention, we were talking about knowledge sharing, but we have recently done as the VI projects in the Philippines, there are 3 projects, is that we had a masterclass on emergency response planning and water safety planning, which was given to all the members, the water districts, the public water districts of the Philippines. That has been a great success, and actually some of the water districts who participated were able to make emergency response plan within the duration of that masterclass, which was 4 weeks. So yeah, there's a lot of knowledge available, and we as VI are very much interested and willing to share our knowledge with all the water companies all over the world. So please contact us if you want any help.
Thank you so much, Carl. I think you've touched on the aspect also partly in terms of utility climate response. Maybe from the other utilities, what role do you see the water operators partnership play in terms of building the capacity for the utility to respond to such climate issues that we've presented here?
I think maybe this question for Mr. Aziz in Pakistan.
Mr. Aziz, are you there?
Yes, I think he is. Might
Yeah,
take a
can
second.
see.
Mr. Aziz. Seems to be stuck.
It could be internet. Okay. Maybe let's look at another question as Mr. Aziz will be preparing to come on. It's to do with climate-oriented water operators partnership. What do climate-oriented water operators partnership look like? And I guess this is for John. Am I correct, Hannah?
It really depends on who wants to take the question. I think Mr. Aziz, there you are. Hi.
Yes, hello. Water Operator Network of Pakistan is a network of 15 water utilities in country and in all provinces of Pakistan. And the information sharing, knowledge sharing, and is the main purpose. And as I explained earlier, that in Lahore we have done a lot of things to save water and to combat this urban flooding. The other utilities in the country also are interested to know from us. And likewise, in Lahore, we want to learn a lot from other utilities who have achieved something in their IT interventions, etc. So it's a vibrant kind of platform. And also another utility in the country, which is Mardan city utility, along with WASA Lahore, have applied for a WAP with the Hungarian utility, Budapest Utility Waterworks, and we have applied jointly to get water operator partnership with the Hungarian utility in the future. So international learning is also our aim and goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Aziz. I'm sure we can also look at the possibility of learning from those utilities that probably experience more or less similar impact of climate impact that we could be going through. The third question for our discussion, I think it look like anyone who who has an idea or a response to talk about it?
Ruben, I also think we're reaching the end of our time, so we can have this question answered while our participants head over to menti.com. Franziska has just posted it in the chat. We have a small interactive survey for everybody, so some very interesting questions awaiting you over there. The link is in the chat, and the code is 7619010. So just copy and paste that. And while our participants are heading over there, John is asking you to repeat the question, Ruben. The last question.
So the last question is, what do climate-oriented water operators partnerships look like? What do climate-oriented water operators partnerships look like? So if that's the case, then I can hand over to Franziska. I was waiting for the bell, Hannah. I never hit the bell. Okay, Franziska.
Thank you, Ruben. Hi, thank you for the smooth moderation. I think we'll take the last question, what do climate-oriented WOPs look like, into the next weeks and even the next months, because that's one of the reasons we're holding this discussion right now. So we would now like to run a small interactive survey to capture as many inputs from you, the participants, as possible, because I think our keynote speaker, John, put it really nicely. We have a practical audience full of smart people who not only think forward, but act forward. So please go to www.menti.com and then enter the code 7619010. And we already have 24 responses trickling in. Let me share them with you. So we have 3 questions prepared for you. You can fill them in at your own pace. First question, we wanted to know, get a bit of an overview, which climate hazards will probably impact your region and the utilities most. You can select one or all of them, even though I really hope for you that not all of them would be applicable for your region. First one is floods, second one droughts, and we can see already this is where our participants today would vote the most for, even though I think it's a bit biased because that's the title of the webinar today. So we have floods and droughts, we have sea level rise, we have violent storms, we have heat waves and wildfire, which will be the topic of the webinar next week. And we have landslides. And we can see there is no single one that is empty, unfortunately. So we can see that all are somehow relevant for some of the regions and also the utilities here. Let's maybe wait a couple more until we proceed. So already 38 submissions. Oh, there was one that had many applicable. Okay, let's proceed to the next question. The survey is still open. You can still respond to it. Next question is, where do you turn to the most for advice and guidance on improving resilience against climate risks and impacts? This question is a scale from 0 to 10. So selecting 0 would mean this is not relevant for me at all. I never use that source. And 10 would be really strong. So yes, this is my go-to resource, organization, page, or person. And of course, for us, it would be really interesting to hear from you if peer operators in your country would be the go-to place, or peer operators in other countries, sector organizations, academia, expert consultants, or also web search for tools and guidelines. And we can see kind of the waves we have here is where people selected their scale. And we can see the peer operators in the country leading the race, so to speak, followed closely and even overtaken by web search for tools and guidelines, which, I mean, is also super relevant because we all agreed before that knowledge sharing and exchanging is super relevant, and that's often easily to be found on the internet. And sector organizations, yes, also very relevant, as well as peer operators in other countries. 33 submissions and still coming in. Of course, we will make all this available in the outcome note that will follow as a package for the both Volume 1 and Volume 2 webinars for you to revisit again. So moving on to the third question, which will be word cloud. Surprise, so we have quite a big word cloud already. The question is, what support do utilities need most to prepare for increasing climate risks? And we are asking you to kind of submit only a keyword, and how this functions is that if a keyword is submitted more than once, it will get bigger and bolder and more visible. And what we can see here is clearly finance, and the different spelling of financing is super prominent. Next to it, we have funds, which is, I think, also similar category. Ooh, this is changing rapidly. Let me pick some out. We, of course, have capacity, really big. We have data. We have investment support. Let me read out some of the smaller ones. Knowledge, leadership, learning networks, collaboration. I see that in different languages popping up. Academia, preparedness plans, mitigation, early warning systems. Super. This is really rich and nice to see, and thanks for all the submissions. So yeah, like I said, this will be captured and shared with you all. You can still submit, still keep going. But now I will switch back to the presentation for some last slides and information. How do we continue from here? Because this webinar is the first kind of event of longer discussion we are kickstarting today. So you can join the discussion and stay in the discussion by joining upcoming webinars to learn, share, and inspire, which is also the main motto of the upcoming WOPS Congress in October. The upcoming topics for the webinars will be for Volume 2 next week, utility climate action, focusing on heat and wildfire. Then in summer, towards summer, we will have webinars on circular development as well as sanitation and wastewater. And you can also share your stories and learnings, for example, on social media by using the hashtag utility climate action, because then we can put an eye on that and will be alerted. Next one. We invite you to join the Global Water Operators Partnerships Alliance collaborative platform, which is on Workplace by Facebook. In case you have kind of agreed to be added to the platform, you will receive an exclusive invitation in the next 24 hours. And with that, you can create your own profile on Workplace. You can follow people and get in touch with them. You can write posts, add photos, videos, or files. And of course, just like on Facebook, react, comment, or tag colleagues. And we will also take some of the unanswered questions from the webinar to Workplace and continue the discussion there. And with this last slide, I would like to say a big thank you, merci, gracias to everyone. And we would like to invite you, of course, to next week's webinar as well on heat and wildfire. We alternated the timing a bit to allow for better timing for some colleagues in different regions. And with that, I would officially close today's webinar and wish you to stay safe and see you soon. Bye, everyone.